Hello and welcome to the latest edition of our podcast, FXRefreshed, where usually we get together with industry professionals from the world of supply chain. Today we're slightly off topic, although we do touch on those issues as it relates to Ken Semler's world as the president and CEO of Impresa Modular. If you like Lego, you'll like what Ken does. Hope you enjoy it. So why don't we kick off and dive straight in then? Impresa Modular is the business, and a couple of looks like you've got a couple of side businesses off the back of that as well. But you've been involved for 13 odd years. Talk to me a little bit about how you got involved in construction or in home building, and specifically modular homes, given that your background looks like it's technology and a little bit of the financial services world as well.
Well, that really started out. My family has a base in construction, primarily the electrical construction side, large electrical like schools, hospitals, things like that. I luckily did a little side gigs with that while I was in college. Didn't get killed by electrocution, but I went to college, got my first job out of college. I went to be an accountant and worked at a couple of different, primarily financial systems companies. But on the side, I was always doing rentals. I was buying houses, nights, weekends, buy it, fix it, flip it, buy it, fix it, rent it, and had kind of done that on the side. And then through 2003, I worked at Citibank. And they wanted me to move to New York, and I didn't want to move to New York. No offense if you live in New York, but
no, I understand.
and my wife felt the same way, so they gave me a nice severance package. I had this, I would call it a hobby then, with a lot of my business had grown substantially, and I was still doing it on the side, and so my hobby became my full-time job, and then the passion took it to the next level, and we grew. And through 2008, the Great Recession hit, and anybody who knows anything about housing knows that was probably not a good time to be in housing, but It was time to remake myself, and I just decided I wanted to be a nationwide modular builder, the first and only one. And that's where we are today. I'm a licensed, registered, certified contractor in 42 states. We exclusively use modular construction, and we are still the only nationwide modular builder. Nobody else is. I'm not laying down the challenge. I'm just saying nobody else has done it yet.
Now, my 8-year-old is super happy about me having this conversation, because I said to him, dude, I'm speaking to a guy who builds massive Lego houses. Is that essentially what we have here in the
shoulder? There is the Lego kit for the modern modular home. Lego.
Yeah, I can see. I can see it.
We put together big Lego. I tell people, I get to have every guy's, dream. I get to play with cranes and giant Legos every day. So, I mean, what more can you ask for?
I can understand now why that was a hobby.
Tell your son he's welcome to come on any job. We'll keep him back a little bit, but it'll be the most fun he's ever had.
That's awesome. That's fantastic. But why? So why modular of all? I guess housing material type or housing ways to construct. Why modular?
Well, actually, it was the path I was on. I mean, it's a good question, but it was. If you think about what modular construction is, it's a little bit from the builder perspective in the field. It's really a little bit of this and a little bit of that. I mean, essentially, the factory's done all the heavy lifting. They've taken the plan that you gave them, put it into modules, and on site, it's a little bit of trim, a little bit of flooring, a little bit of electrical. And it's much like I was doing with my remodeling or my rehabbing. I was fixing, I had to have people who could do a little bit of plumbing, a little bit of electrical, a little bit of flooring. And so when I was turning lots of houses, I mean, I got up to the point on the rehab remodel, I was buying 3 to 15 houses a month and flipping or remodeling. And so I started having people say, well, would you build a house for me? Well, guess what? Modular took the exact skill set that my team, my company already had, and allowed me to become an instant new home builder. It kind of, it eradicated the learning curve. I was basically there. And so modular filled the bill. And that's what, again, when I go out and promote modular to builders today, remodelers make amazing modular builders because their mindset's already, I'm taking all these modules. Now there might be a 1/4 inch or a 1/2 inch of tolerance within all of that. In and of themselves, those modules are structurally, integral, everything. When they come together, if there's anything, but the remodeler's mindset is he puts it together, shims it, places it, does it, and it's a perfect house. And that mindset is, amazing to have as a modular builder.
Wow. And you mentioned plans just then. I was checking your website out recently, and I think I stopped counting at about 100 or so different house styles and floor plans that you have. Is that, am I reading that correctly?
You actually never got very far. That was probably on the 3rd page. We actually, in some states in the country, because of our factory support and background, we have in some, like if you're in Maryland, Pennsylvania, Virginia, you may have upwards of 1,700 plans to look at, to choose from.
Wow.
So,
wow.
It's based on your region and the factory support we have. And in most states in the country, we can do custom. So if you go out to any one of the house plan websites and find something you like, we will literally modularize that plan and build it for you as a full custom plan.
Yeah, I'll be honest. I was a bit like a kid in a candy store because for some reason, and I can't explain why, I'm a big fan of looking at floor plans and real estate, like the real estate websites in the UK, like the Zillow equivalent, for example, will not just have the pictures of the houses, the inside, the outside. They'll always have a floor plan. And I was always disappointed when we were looking to move to the US and we're looking through Zillow and what's the other? I forget the other one, but Zillow mostly. And we're looking at all these houses and I'm not seeing floor plans. And I was somewhat deflated, I think, as a, and so just looking through your website the other day, and I've called it back up again today. For some strange reason, I'm just happy to sit there and look at these floor plans and imagine. And it's to your point as well, like the fact that you can custom these as well. So I guess you can use one as a template, as a base, and then move that around or even start from scratch, I guess.
Actually, Mark, I will tell you, when we started out, the industry started out keeping it simple. And I hate to say, our industry's done a poor job of using the M word. So here in the US, it's mobile homes, manufactured homes, modular. Totally mobile / mod manufactured. Manufacturers, what the technical name is. There is a separate building code, and it's affordable housing. It's meant to be more affordable to build. And then there's the local building code, which is your permanent construction, and that's what we build to. We just happen to build it off site, right. And so, but because we have so much variation, it's just our industry started out in those simplistic house plans from its other factory built cousin. But today we have just taken the technology and what we do and our capability that almost every house to this point, I would say Pennsylvania, which is kind of the nirvana world of modular construction here in the US, if I dream it, they can build it. Right. And everything is a one-off. Right. We're lucky if you do 2 houses the same at this point. House plans on our website are the basis of a good start to design the house you want.
Yeah. And you're offering a turnkey operation. So you from site prep, digging the foundation all the way through to.
It's a good question. It depends on where you're at in the US. I mean, to cover that many states in the US, and the majority of the US, we will actually work with our customer, who will usually find a local contractor that will, direct or work with and consult with. And they'll usually get a foundation prep to seal level. We work with our customer through design, order, delivery, and set. And that design, order, delivery, set process is, that's where the key is, understanding modular. We deliver it, we set it. That way, any issues are resolved right there. And then we work with the local contractor to do what we call the final button up in many areas. We do have franchises out there. We've taken our systems and we've taken this because other builders are trying to find a way into modular. And there is no modular 101 class that's out there. So there's no training. And so our industry, in all honesty, I hate to say, I love it. I embrace it, but we're horrible at teaching new people to become the modular right now. And so we've taken those people, under a franchise. We give them our brand. We're kind of the mentors for them and teaching them what to do, but they've got our systems, our website, and we get them started faster. They don't have that long trudge uphill trying to get started in a new business. We embrace them as a franchise. That's why you buy a system, so you can catapult yourself up to number one pretty quickly. And that's what we do. And so we have that. Those are turnkey, and then we have local turnkey operations ourselves that we operate.
Right. And so under that model, the franchisee, are they selling your brand, or are they out there under their own brand but using your technology?
They're selling our brand. So we're Impresa Modular. So their signs will say, I liken it to you go to the Hilton Hotel, but at the Hilton Hotel, you look at that plaque on the side when you check in. It says proudly operated by the Patel Hospitality LLC corporate, or the Hospitality Corporation. That's us. They're going to be Joe's Builders LLC, but to the whole outside world, it's the Impresa brand that they fly under, and we are nationally known. That two triangle, two square logo is pretty much known throughout. Anybody looking for modular will discover us, and that brand carries weight in our industry.
I don't think that we can have a discussion without touching on COVID and the impact that has had to the world at large, to individuals, to businesses. But for being a bit more, I guess, myopic, just thinking about Impresa specifically, what's been the impact to you folks for the last 18 months? What are you doing to deal with any of the, I guess, the pitfalls or the barriers that might be put in the way? And I know that COVID's affecting supply chains, and it's putting inflationary pressures on certain raw materials, and it's forcing some manufacturers to switch production from Asia to maybe look at a bit more closer to home, like Mexico, for example. A bit more costly, but at least we can get product on the shelf a little bit quicker. It's a bit of a broad question, and I've done what every salesperson shouldn't do and stack my questions. But COVID in general, what's been the impact?
COVID, when it started, it shut down everything because nobody knew what was going to happen. Back last year, March, April timeframe, and once it broke loose, then the housing industry just took off. Last year, when we thought things should have started to spiral, I don't want to say spiral downward, when we would normally in September in the construction industry, especially in the Northeast, start to see it trail off, instead of going down 20%, our business went up 20%. And then, but you saw that rapidly right after that, all of a sudden lumber prices, it's like the industry went, we want a part of that. And it's been on a ride ever since. Housing prices, when you looked at random width lumber, per thousand was roughly around $250 to $300. And we had a peak of almost $1,700 at the peak, 4 or 5 months ago. That was just, untenable. And what every other supplier in the building industry has piled on. And so we've seen dimensional lumber prices go back down to almost where they were. Now, sheet good products, OSB plywood, have pretty much leveled out, but not going down, not going up. But every other supplier, doors, windows, any PVC resin-based product has been, you're seeing a 3% price increase, a 7% price increase. It goes up. And the delays for windows and doors now, something that we typically had a 2-week backlog historically, now at most a 2-week backlog is now 14 weeks out if you can get it. And so, one of my factories 2 weeks ago, I was up and the owner's like, well, you know what? Every week it's you wake up and what's our problem going to be this week? That week, that factory couldn't get duplex outlets.
Right.
And allocations, tubs. If a small factory needs 40 tubs a month to meet its production, but they're allocated 20, what do they do?
So the way that modular was, I guess, initially successful in the fact that you can get these structures up really quickly, meaning that you can turn them out quickly so that you get your cash flow is coming through nice and quickly as well. That this is causing a bit more of an issue, I'd imagine, on the cash flow and on the supply chain as a whole.
The whole broken supply chain impacts the industry because just like you say, the benefit of modular is I line everything up so that in 3 days, 5 days, 8 days, depending on the factory, I go from nothing in parts to a finished home in 3 to 8 days. But that means everything's got to be there. And with a broken supply chain, what if I build a house and the windows aren't there? It's kind of hard to build a house without windows and be able to put it outside. And so that's the whole, you lose all the efficiencies when all the materials don't get there on time. And today's supply chain makes that a small miracle every day if you have everything you need.
Of course. And what about from a labor perspective? So now we're back into, you alluded to the fact that we're now back into kind of like full swing. Are you seeing that? Actually, let me restructure that question. So you touched on something I was going to bring up, the fact that the resale value of houses these days is now astronomical, and certainly from where we are in south of Boston, the inventory has at least started to come back, but has been largely non-existent, and that's probably also kept the house prices up. You're seeing that probably across the US, but are people turning maybe to alternatives like maybe building their own house? Is that why you might have seen an upturn in your volume and in your demand?
Oh yeah, I mean, undoubtedly I think so many realtors, when they didn't have anything to sell anybody, I mean, think through the ripple effect that what this does to everybody in the process. And if there's 20 houses to sell in Boston and there's 3,000 realtors, they're not making a living. So they've got to come up with, they have lots. So, hey, if I can connect a lot with a builder and modular is a little faster, I can get a commission. I mean, so, we saw, I think some of that is people, it was also in the industry, it changed the complexion of who our buyers were, which we had a lot of, I don't want to say unwilling buyers or unwilling builders, but the person their mindset was, I'm going to find a house, point to this one, I want to buy it, go get my loan, move in, and 30 days later, 60 days later, I'm living in my house. There was no house to buy. And I will tell you, custom home building is not for the faint of heart. It is for the person who wants what they want, and they're in this for a 6-month or more process, because instead of a single decision, that's the one and point to a house, there's 200, 300, 1,000 decisions that go into custom building a house. And our society isn't good at decision making at that level in so many ways today. So it's the person who's ready for that.
Right. No, I totally get that. And I, from a decision perspective, I'm pretty sure that my wife and I would come to agree on a plan and a design. And then the moment that you put the first shovel in the ground, we'll be back to you to say, well, do you mind if we move that wall from like here to here? I'm sure you get that quite a bit.
I call it the big giant whoosh, because like I said, that house is produced in 3 to 5 days. And that's the difference with modular, is all those decisions that you could have made over the 6 or 9 months your custom home was being done.
Yeah,
I need them all up front, because like I said, I have to have a perfect supply chain, and all that needs to be there day one. So it's 3 days, it's done. And if I have to move a wall or whatever, now the benefit of it is we show up on site the next day, a house is set, and you just leapfrogged your neighbor, by 5 or 6 months like that.
Yeah.
So it's the benefit of the system.
Right. And so from that perspective, I think the fact that we could be so indecisive, making that decision and then having it done, like the house ready almost within 3 days. I haven't got that 9 months of like, well, you know what, maybe that extra bedroom would be quite nice. Well, no, should we do it? Should we not do it? It doesn't matter.
Decision making.
Absolutely. I love it. Keeps my life simple anyway. We discussed before about the expansion of a new factory, and I wanted to touch on I guess the decision that led to saying yes to building the factory, and then the rationale behind the location of the factory, which is down in the southeast, right? We can't name where, but we can say in the proximity. But so building a factory is not something that you just all of a sudden say, right, let's do that tomorrow. Although in the modular world, you probably could. But but what led to that decision?
Well, for us as we've been growing, I mean, capacity in our industry has been it's been an issue for a while. I mean, and I know it's been coming, and so we've been preparing. We've been pushing and looking for probably the last 3 years. But really, what the tipping point was is with COVID, it has pushed the industry to its limit. It's funny. I'm going to say it's the perfect storm, and you started to mention it earlier. Is I've got a broken supply chain. I've got a labor force in the construction industry that's never been more lean. That just is non-existent. I have house prices increasing, and I have an internet who's educated the public, and a public who's willing to go out and learn. And now, and developers, it's not just the consumer, it's the developer who can't find the builders to turn their dirt into money, which they do by putting houses on it. And so the combination of, I'm going to call it the perfect storm, basically we ran out of capacity faster than I expected in our industry. There's just not enough factories to meet demand. And so we had an opportunity in that southeastern area, as you described. And so it was the perfect opportunity for us. We had a substantial business opportunity that I couldn't get capacity for with another factory. And so we were lucky, 30 minutes away, we found an available building. It wasn't an existing modular factory. This is an empty factory that we could convert. And so it was just, again, being opportunistic that we are also in the Southeast, where if you look at any National Association of Home Builder study or Economic Realtor study, I think the last one I saw said there's a deficit of 160,000 homes in the Southeast, that they're behind. You can't build fast enough. And so again, it was just a perfect location to open up a factory at break even to start, and within an area with proximity to so many of the southeastern major cities that we're ready to start working with developers, investor partners that are developers that are looking for capacity themselves, and work with them.
Right. Yeah. And I'm sure that deficit is only going to continue to grow, right? As people continue to flock and migrate to the warmer states, the warmer climes.
Yeah, your Massachusetts, New York, New Jersey isn't being kind to their citizenry, and they're trying to move south to get away from taxes and a number of things.
Well, I can definitely feel the need to move south to get away from higher taxes. But in terms of the weather, I do love the sun. But being from the UK, I'm kind of used to rain and snow in the summer. So when it's 30 degrees here and 5 inches of snow, that's when I get my Crocs and flip flops and my Speedos on. That's a warm time for me.
Let's just stop there.
Yeah, I'll let you see that every time you blink. Okay, and in terms of so the factory itself, then you said it's already a standing building. You've made the acquisition. When are we looking at getting into production?
We're going to be doing a limited. There's a unique thing we can do in the building itself because it's so large. It's a 240,000 square foot facility. So we're going to do an intermediate step of doing what we call stand in place construction, where it's not an assembly line process. We will actually build in modules indoors, much like West Coast factories do on cribbing. With by January, February, the goal to actually have all of our assembly line jigs, our mechanization in place. And so we'll start producing that way to, start optimizing production.
Right.
But the factory is, we'll get that first line up in that January, February timeframe. And we actually have room to create 2 additional lines in the factory. And as business warrants, we'll continue to grow that. And I mean, ultimately production is going to be somewhere probably between 500 and 750 homes a year out of this facility at full production.
Right. Wow. To me, a layperson, that sounds like a lot. Is that a lot? It sounds a lot.
From a factory perspective, yeah. I mean, most factories in the Northeast do anywhere from 150 to 350 a year in the average factory. But the average factory is probably 50 to 85,000 square feet. And this one's about 3 times that. So.
Right. Okay. And you can, from that factory, you're pretty much able to produce, I guess the right question would be, how many of those floor plans can you produce from that particular factory?
So this factory, like I said, we're really focusing this on development. And we
Right.
build efficiencies by actually reducing and shrinking that floor print availability.
Yeah.
And so we are really going to get it down to probably about 20 or so, 30 plans that we are going to consider our portfolio of plans that we offer that we'll get really good at and have our costing down on. And that's what we'll offer to developers to, if we want to bring in local builders, but that's probably what we're going to focus on and just get really that limited set.
Right. And so you mentioned earlier on as well that depending on which state you're in, depends on the number of plans that are available to you. And is that because of certain building codes, or is that just because of what's being produced in that area?
So each factory that's currently out there does a lot of custom home plans, but just reality of marketing is you have to be able to see a standard house plan to start dreaming about the next house plan. So most factories create 50 to 75, maybe some of them even more than that, house plans. And because of our relationship with each factory, we actually put all of their house plans up on our site. And it just turns out the highest number of southern and northern house factory rate coverage hits in that Maryland, Pennsylvania, Virginia area. So we've got every plan almost available on the East Coast. It's about the Mid-Atlantic. So that's why you see so many plans there.
Right. Okay. Wonderful. And coming back to the supply chain very quickly, you folks are you having to import any of your raw materials? And if you are, you're facing any supply chain related issues, or are you lucky that it's all domestic for you?
So, things that we use internally, I mean, it's amazing how much, I don't think people realize till the recent last several years as it's become more and more apparent how much of a house is actually built in China. The materials, nails, wiring. So many of the pieces that you don't think about aren't built in this country. You have to try really hard to build an entirely US made house. And so obviously then we're seeing shortages and everything, price spikes and everything. You and I had spoke earlier. I come from a family with electrical background, and I have a cousin right now that's works for an electrical supply house. And he just told me this weekend that he's paying $28,000 to get a shipment in, from China right now of wiring. And that's just the shipping. That's not the material in that container. So it's impacting the whole industry, and you may not see it as a builder or as a consumer. You may not even be aware how you're being impacted by that broken supply chain and the cost. But we'll see if it changes. Will we start producing more in the United States? Can we start producing more of the materials in the United States? I mean, it's, granites, a number of things are actually shipped, imported. And those are things that you just assume every day. You don't think about what's it cost to ship granite. It's a little heavy. And, how much of it's actually made in the United States, it's coming from a mine in India or South America or China. And it's got to find its way here to be your countertop. So
so a similar kind of story. We have a prospect that we speak to who is they're in need of calcium. I believe it's calcium, and it's cheaper to ship from Europe than it is to ship from Utah down to the southern states. And the cost of the product is pretty much pound for pound or dollar for dollar, as we are now in the US, dollars for dollar, pretty much the same, even with the exchange rate. But it's the shipping costs that are significantly less, believe it or not, coming from Europe than transportation costs here in the States. Now, of course, that's going to take them a little bit longer to get the products on site, but that's a cost they're willing to bear. So I find that incredibly strange, but it's not the first story that I've heard of that. So, and a number of the guests that we've had on the podcast over the last few months have all been in and around supply chain, and pretty much almost every time we've talked about driver shortage here in the US, which is really killing the slowly killing the industry, if you will, or certainly at least, causing the ripple effect to increase prices?
I was one of the major suppliers or major manufacturers of gypsum, the wallboard, drywall that we put up on our houses. I was at their plant in Alabama several weeks ago, and I think that they ship every day. It's amazing. This thing runs 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365. They produce every day they ship 165 or 155 semi truckloads of drywall every day from this plant. Every day, 100. And on any given day, they have an absentee rate or a no-show rate of drivers of around 10 to 15%. And now they have to go to brokerage houses because they don't have room to store their production. They can't. They have to get it out the door and on the road.
Right.
And but it goes back to the building demand. They have 10 factories. They're the largest producer in the U.S. They have 10 factories running, 24/7, 365, and they can't meet the demand for drywall in the United States right now.
Wow.
With their other competitors.
And so that 10 to 15% no show. I mean, I'm going to guess that like a couple of individuals are genuinely sick, but are most of these individuals just upping sticks and going to work and drive for someone else? Because I'm sure if they're not driving for that particular company, they're not getting paid. So I don't think it's people taking a fake sick day per se. Are they finding alternative?
Well, it could be. I don't know the answer to that.
Right.
But I also know, I used an example earlier when, with one factory that we had I was giving you the example of they had an absenteeism rate and they thought they were going to do a good thing and pay $3 an hour more because big jump in the manufacturing industry. They turned out shooting themselves in the foot because now they just let the person afford to only have to work 4 days a week because they made the same money. And their absenteeism, if it did anything, actually went up after that. They didn't cause what they thought they were going to cause. So you got to be careful in the industry right now that it's too easy for people to jump, too easy for people to, in essence, do what they want to do because somebody's willing to pay them more to do it for them if they leave.
Yeah. Well, I mean, regretfully, we're in an environment where money's always been important, but for many families that might be finding it particularly tough, moving somewhere else for that extra couple of bucks an hour it makes a big difference to them. So you can kind of you can understand why in some cases that's the case. If they want to be loyal to their existing employer, it's, you know what, I've got vegetables that I need to put on the table. So I'm off. So what's before we wrap up, what's next for Impresa?
Well, we have lots of good things happening, but I think we're going to our industry is doing nothing but growing. I see us doing we have other opportunities for factories that will probably start to grow and improve in that area. And I just think this industry is ripe for opportunity right now. And the interesting thing, Mark, that I will tell you is I don't even think we know the opportunities that are just 3 years from now. So I think we're going to leave ourselves open for the next opportunities, but right now we'll spend it on factories.
Perfect. And I think that was a nice segue. I've got a year-old dog that is desperate to leave my home office, and thankfully they've just been let out by other family members. So yeah, if they bark loud enough, then they attract somebody's attention. Well, it's great. I mean, I'm loving following your posts on LinkedIn. I always find them incredibly informative. I think from a renovation perspective, that is a pseudo hobby of mine, nowhere near to the point where you were doing your 3 to 15 houses. I think it was, you said a month. Mine is more of well, let me look at it from afar and let other people do it, and then I could just admire the before and after. And that's kind of like I'm more interested at the end of the show on HGTV where they show exactly. Yeah. Show me the before, show me the after. Let's move on. So no, I follow it with interest, and I think because of what I see from you and what you're posting, I've now connected with and started following other people in the industry. And I think one of the guys I think his name's Gary Fleischer. I don't know if you know.
Gary Fleischer right now. Yeah.
Yeah.
He lives 20 minutes from me. He's my buddy.
Oh, really? So you know him? Oh, right.
So here's a little secret. I wasn't going to say when you asked what's new for me. So Gary and I, so his blog site, which not that many people know, actually now, Gary's 74th birthday. I think his 74th or 75th birthday is Saturday or Sunday. And so Gary's website runs on one of my domains now. When he changed and rebranded and did all that, that was actually on us. We did that for him.
Nice.
And so Gary and I have partnered. We actually have a new magazine. I became a publisher also. That's my newest endeavor. And so on top of starting a factory, I've become a magazine publisher. Gary's the editor, and we'll probably issue our first magazine, but we'll have the website, the print, a digital magazine, and a print magazine. It's probably, I don't think it's going to launch in November. I think we're going to try to have it launch in December. So we'll have our third issue out before the International Builder Show in February.
Right.
So,
that sounds awesome.
So that'll be cool.
Well, no, I'm excited about that for you. And obviously the content is going to be modular homes.
Off-site. So we're not going to limit ourselves to just modular. It'll be the entire off-site. So that could be panelized, concrete, modular components. So we'll cover the gamut of any off-site construction, and we're not going to limit ourselves to residential. It'll be both commercial and residential. And so we've got a lot of contributors. I think people that are anxious from a building science perspective. You might end up we may come to you to write an article for all the factories and all the players that are doing it, to write an article about, hey guys, think about where you can grab that money when you're getting shipping. Because Mark, factories are falling out of the sky. There's a lot of money coming into our industry that, if you would ask me 6 months, so essentially there was two earth life-changing weeks in March that literally I got up on my birthday's March 2nd. You can write that down for future purposes like next year. But on March 2nd, I met this guy on March 2nd through LinkedIn, and LinkedIn's been the most powerful thing you could ever ask for me. I'm constantly sending and connecting with people, and I have this little thing that runs that actually does a lot of stuff for me on LinkedIn. And so on March 2nd, I met this one guy, Darren Zaruba, who's done a lot of financial. He's really good at working with investors and doing everything. And in all honesty, I have had in the past, we have no debt, but I have no investors. It's 100% me, and I grow organically. And so I've never had to deal with that. And to do a factory, I knew I was going to have to bring in, and in this new factory, I'm the majority owner, but I'm not the only owner because I needed some help to pull it off. And so I met Darren Zaruba on March 2nd on a Zoom call. We scheduled it for my birthday. I knew I had to go south and meet with this developer who I thought we were going to sell houses to. So I had this guy that worked for me before that worked in a subdivision in North Carolina. He'd taken that job, and he was the vice president of construction for a developer doing a small modular development. And I met this guy who was an investor who on that Saturday, I was getting ready to leave on Sunday morning. That's to head south and drive because I was making all these stops. So this guy connects with, he replies to an invite I sent on LinkedIn. Well, next thing you know, we're on a phone call. We're talking a little bit that week. He says, hey, you're coming through Raleigh, stop by my house. Here's my address. Stop by and visit with me. I'd like to meet you. So I have my one guy that works for me with me. So we went down to that subdivision. It turns out that subdivision doesn't want us to sell them houses. They want us to build their houses in their community. That guy, when you go to his house on that Friday, he's basically loves what I'm doing. Basically says, you point to any factory, I'll buy it for you. He's so that guy that worked for me, I'd stopped by that Monday on the way down, visited with him at where he was at with the subdivision. And what else comes? Oh, and there's another factory in Greenville, South Carolina that I'd known of that my one guy told me about. So when I was on the way back, I just called this guy up that I hadn't met before, talked with him. We were connected on LinkedIn and in the previous weeks. Said, hey, I'm an hour from your factory. I'd love to take you out for like breakfast in the morning and see your factory in the morning, Saturday morning if you're available. He's okay. So we meet him and go see his factory, and we do all of that. And so I come back, and now that guy that I met in Raleigh ended up buying my factory and did a lease back. The guy that I went to that subdivision and saw, he's now the president of Impresa Building Systems. Darren's the one that coordinated the investors, who was also a franchisee that wanted to be a franchisee. Him and his team ended up being the first initial investors in that Darren coordinated for me in the factory. That guy that was the ran that factory in Greenville is now my president of manufacturing operations. And that subdivision that we went to go visit that I thought I was going to be selling homes to now is the impetus to make the factory break even. The factory's 30 minutes away, and we're going to be putting about 120 homes a year plus in that subdivision.
Wow.
So that was an important 2 weeks in March.
Yeah, that was a
lot of it driven by LinkedIn.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And let's not also forget, I mean, you're employing local people as well. So in
the area, we'll be 180 people is what we're trying to get up to,
Yeah,
a lot of people we've got to hire.
That's fantastic. So, I mean, you got your finger in many pies. I didn't realize that I was actually speaking to the kingpin of construction for the US. And now I understand why it took so long to get together.
I am
because
a little busy.
You are, yeah. I mean, you're being very selfish with it, but thank you very much for taking this, for gracing us with your presence tonight. No, that's really great. I mean, where you came from. And I said this earlier on, like the fact that this was a hobby to begin with. So you're in it because you're passionate about it. You're not in it just because you want to turn a profit. I mean, obviously, as I said earlier on, like we're not charities. So we do need to earn money and we do need to pay our way in the world. But the fact that you've chosen a profession that you understand a lot about, but you are incredibly passionate about it. And I really enjoy meeting people like that as well. So thank you very much for taking your time to come on today. I really, really appreciate it.
Well, hopefully it does something for you. Hopefully, hopefully 2 or 3 people look at this,
Yeah, well, I'll send it off to my parents. There'll be two viewers. So we should be okay. That will double what we had last month. So yeah, you're good, man. You're good. Yeah. Well, listen, I'm going to let you go, but thanks again, Ken. Right, sincerely appreciate your time. Thanks for sharing where you're at and where you're going.
I wasn't lying. I might actually hit you up for an article if you're interested in writing articles. I think you have might be a good outlet for you, more than you might actually know the people that are in this industry. You might like it.
I'm gonna probably take you up on that. My fee for writing articles is pretty nominal as well. So you'll be okay.
Well, good, because so is our pay scale.
They probably match. Yeah, they're gonna match, I'm sure.
It's we'll see. Once we get a little notoriety, maybe we can start paying for it. But most of the people now are actually writing just because they want their name on the byline and be able to get the credibility and the notoriety.
I get it. No, that's what we try and write as much as we can for as many publications. Less because we're trying to get our brand out there, although that is a nice byproduct of it. But really because we want to make sure that people are using best practices when it comes to global money movement and foreign exchange. And it's amazing here in the US versus in Europe how, I'd be careful how I say this, it works, but as I've described it to somebody this morning, funny enough, it's a bit like a Band-Aid over a bleeding artery. It will work for a short period of time. And in Europe, like the adaptation of the way that people are moving money and the way that they're using supply chain professionals, the take up there has been tremendous. Here in the US, I'm finding a lot more but that's the way we've always done it. And that kind of drives me nuts a little bit.
Well, and also think is in Europe, when you have, it's always interesting to me, and in Europe, every country is about the size of a U.S. state. And you can compare it to one of them.
Yeah.
But you don't need a passport. You can just drive around unimpeded. And in Europe, pre-EU, that you couldn't do that. Mm-hmm. And we don't think about that. And it's lost on me. If you would think about every time you went from Rhode Island to Connecticut to Virginia, you spoke a different language. Now add that on top of it. And so, language enforces the regionality, or the separation of every area, and you don't have that in the U.S. So we're separated from the rest of the world by two big oceans.
Mm-hmm.
And so we really, I don't want to say arrogant, but we just never had to. We've been fat, dumb, and happy just sitting here by ourselves, and we all, cross around, so we don't really have borders. And Mexico used to let us in and didn't care, and Canada until recently, when they started building their wall, didn't care. And so we've never had to. So now people are having to think about it, like you say, and and it makes a big difference. But again, us Americans don't change easily either. So it's like I told you, housing. This is the way we've been doing it for 200 years. Why would we change now?
Yeah. Well, I guess some things it makes sense to stay the same, but by and large, like certainly in the financial services industry, there's definitely ways and means of shoring up that bottom line just by a couple of quick tweaks. So listen, I'll chat to you off camera about potentially writing some stuff, and hopefully that resonates with your readership and helps make their lives a little bit better. But in the meantime, I'll let you go, and thank you again, and appreciate your time.
Thank you. Appreciate it, Mark. Thanks.
Thanks, Ken.